Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I am your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, January 24th, and this week, insurance chaos, gig workers with no control, and AI has errors. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Bryant Greening. Bryant, happy cold Friday.
Happy cold Friday, Jared. It's nice to be back, but I'm ready to get into the weekend.
Seriously, it has been a brutal week here in Chicago. If you're here in the Midwest, particularly, it's freezing in this office right now, but we're doing it, baby. We're doing it. So it's been something.
Yep.
But let's jump right into it. We have some pretty interesting stories today. Some, again, continuations of stuff we talked about last week. The first one is one of those stories, basically covering New York City, again, in the insurance. So New York City is now trying to calm the chaos of the insurance. And this is from Bloomberg. And they reported, quote, two of the bills would make it easier to adjust insurance rates and allow regulators to phase increases after American Transit was criticized for offering drivers premiums far lower than its competitors. The proposals follow a November meeting held by state officials and industry stakeholders to discuss the solutions to address their insolvency. ATIC has sought regulatory approval to raise rates as part of its measure to remediate its financial situation, though driver representatives and rideshare companies, including Uber, have warned it would increase drivers' expenses and make rides more expensive for consumers. So, Bryant, this obviously can get very technical, and this article goes into a lot of detail. But from what I understand, this is a response and a continuation with all this chaos with the insolvency of the New York City insurance company, correct?
Yeah, so what we've been talking about for a couple episodes now is just this insurance mayhem that's going on in New York, where everybody's fighting, particularly Uber, on the costs of insurance and what it's going to look like to insure rideshare drivers going forward. Insurance is always a huge issue in the industry because it's how people stay safe. When accidents happen, when people get injured in a rideshare vehicle or due to a rideshare driver's negligence, there has to be insurance that pays those medical bills, pays the costs of lost wages, pain and suffering, any other damage that those individuals sustain. The insurance is what we're tapping into. So I'm glad to see that there's at least some initial steps here to resolve this issue, because if it's in flux, if there's mayhem in the insurance coverage, nobody's in a good place. We need to, first of all, to know what the coverage is. Second of all, we need to make sure that it's stabilized so that everybody is clear in terms of how they're covered, when they're covered, what events are covered, what injuries are covered. So these bills, they're a good first step. And we have been talking for several weeks now about, the issues that would arise if this thing really fell through. So, long story short, I'm glad to see that steps are being taken to put things back in order. And I hope that things actually do play out and get back in order quickly, because bills are not laws. And until this thing is finalized, there is a lot up in the air.
Yeah, I will say I think it's a good thing that the city itself has been so responsive on this. You can tell that this is a serious issue, as you just said. The city is really responsive, trying to pass laws into this. Uber is throwing their hat in the ring, saying, maybe for the good or the worst side of it, but they're saying, hey, you guys got to figure this out. Drivers are saying got to figure it out. So, like you said, if this does not get handled, it could be very bad, very messy. So things are progressing. And I'm sure they're going to fight. And what does that actually mean in the end? I don't know, but there's things happening, which I think is the plus. Moving on to Tuesday. Where is Tuesday? Oh, here we go. Yes. The algorithms for couriers have become a nightmare. And this is from The Guardian. And they reported, quote, this week, gig workers, trade unions, and human rights groups launched a campaign for greater openness from Uber Eats, Just Eats, and Deliveroo about the logic underpinning these algorithms that determine what work they do and what they are paid. Couriers are wondering why sometimes someone who has just only logged on gets a gig, while others are waiting longer or overlooked. Why, when the restaurant is busy and asking for couriers, does the app say there are none available. Some drivers are calling this an absolute nightmare. He says that he's lost permanent access on one of the platforms over a matter of 5-minute wait time in a restaurant. Someone else has also said, without warning, while doing a delivery for burgers, fried chicken, and groceries, his work completely stopped, and it took months to figure out that actually they had just randomly deactivated him. So, Bryant, this is interesting in the sense that these algorithms and the transparency is not getting better, and it's just there's no rhyme or reason. It's not even just the pay. I mean, this is really just also about when I'm even getting work or when I'm not getting work.
It's rideshare and gig work has become so complex, and the lack of transparency is just mind-boggling because people change their entire lives to enter this industry. They quit quote unquote traditional jobs for the freedom of gig work so that they can make their own hours, so that they know what they need to do, when they need to do it to live their lives and to earn income. And then when these companies refuse to provide the basic information as to how the apps are functioning, how much people are going to get paid for what activity, when they're going to be able to access the apps and get the job, well, it takes all of the flexibility and all the real benefit out of gig work in general. So it's a real shame that there's not any sort of regulation in place, that there's not any sort of rules that require transparency, because without transparency, the industry just doesn't work. And we're starting to see that bubble up. Workers are getting aggravated. There's been lawsuits that have been filed related to this type of lack of transparency. It's only a matter of time before this thing really erupts, and I think we're starting to see the beginning of that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it goes into detail with the story that I talked about. This gig worker's name was Lucas Myron, and he was in the process of delivering food, and his work stopped. He only found out later that he was deactivated, and they eventually got him back on. But he only found out due to basically a court order. He had to sue the gig company to even find out while he was deactivated. So the amount of time and money and process to do that, to just find out that, oh, we don't know why, sorry, you're deactivated, is absolutely mind-blowing.
Right. I mean, imagine being at a traditional job and then one day not having the job, like the door's just locked and you can't get back in. That's not the way that our employment situation in the United States is set up. That's not the way that any person should be treated. There's just a basic lack of respect and a lack of dignity in these jobs that's purely the fault of the companies who don't provide the basic human right. They don't provide any sort of transparency, again, that dehumanizes the people who work for them. They're the ones who are creating all these billions of dollars for these companies. They're the ones who are putting in the blood, the sweat, to get food to people who order it, to fill these orders that are making Uber Eats and Grubhub and all the others all this money. They deserve to have just some basic employment rights. Like, we need to have something in place that guarantees these workers a sense of transparency, due process, information, so that they can't just be thrown to the curb on a whim.
Yeah, it's 100%. And, and the thing here is this isn't new. I think that's the bigger issue I'm having with this, where these gig companies are saying, oh, it's, we know what we're doing, or it's, this is just part of the system. But these are major issues and like you said, imagine any other employment where you just are fired and don't even know you're fired halfway through and have to get a lawsuit to find out why. So these companies have been around for years now. And so it's hard for me to believe that it's just, oh, this is just how it works, or, oh, we're testing something new. It's really, I just think, completely unfair and completely ridiculous. And it needs to change. And I'm glad these articles come out, because at least nudges in the direction, exposes it. And like you said, I think we're starting to see kind of I think it's just going to escalate until it fixes. I mean, it has to. I can't see another way to deal with it. So for our final story, it is forgiving AI. Uber's CEO asked for forgiveness, but for AI. Business Insider reported, quote, society will have to weigh up to the acceptable level of errors from AI in real-world systems like robotaxis versus its potential benefits. This is from Uber's CEO. He pointed out that the safety record of autonomous vehicle giant Waymo is actually meaningfully safer than operated by human beings. A report produced by Waymo in partnership with an insurance company said that the fleet of autonomous cars was safer than human drivers. The report actually said that Waymo's cars faced 90% fewer insurance claims related to bodily harm. Still, self-driving cars have faced backlash amid some high-profile safety incidents. Last year, Waymo issued a recall after two of its cars crashed into a pickup truck, while Tesla's full self-driving system has been involved in multiple incidents. Brian, it feels like he's just sort of setting up the fact that he's saying indirectly there's going to be accidents, there's going to be injuries and likely deaths, but it's, hey, technology's getting better, so it's kind of worth it.
Right. I think that's exactly what he's saying. He's getting ahead of this and trying to put the public on notice that there are going to be issues with this technology. Like you said, there's going to be accidents, injuries, deaths. And he's asking the company to weigh what does it want? Does it want advancement in technology? Or does it want a 100% safe vehicle? Because if that's what the public wants, 100% safety, then these vehicles are not ready to get out onto the streets. I, for one, don't really think that the tech companies are giving the public that option. There's no vote on this. There's been no referendum where people get to go out and say, I would love to have self-driving cars, or no, I vote no. The tech companies are putting them on the roads and forcing the public to just accept it. We have seen time and time again these issues that have popped up with these robotaxis. Not all of them involve fatal injury, but they do involve accidents. They do involve injuries. And I would like to see more testing. I would like to see more regulation. I would like to, just have more information about these vehicles' capabilities before they start flooding our city streets like they've done in cities around the country. So, it's certainly the technology is here and it's about to be unleashed. And I don't really think that we're going to put the genie back in the bottle. But we should listen to Dara when he says there's going to be accidents, there's going to be injuries, because there certainly will be.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this report, if you dive into it, and we actually have covered that report. So I've been seeing this a few times. I think Elon already posted about it. Dara's talking about it. This 90%, non-bodily injury, and here's this report from Waymo, and look what it's done. And now, if you look on the surface, it actually is pretty impressive, right? So, 90% of incidents aren't having bodily, it's like down 90%. You're not getting really hurt, and it's also on a rate that was 25 million miles. That's how many miles that they did to determine this. But here's the thing: when you dig into it, and if you more in the article, and actually a previous article, so these other experts are explaining, even at the 25 million miles, that's only 1% of the amount of mileage that human drivers do. So it's at 90% is great, but it's 90% of only 1% of what's going on out there. So the real question is going to become, well, what happens when it starts to become 10% or 20 or 30% of all the mileage that most humans were typically driving? Are we going to see a different narrative? Is that number going to drop? I guess we have to see. I think that's why Dara is saying, just get ready. This is coming.
Yeah, no, I think we have a small sample size, and right now the sample looks pretty good. Like that, the numbers look okay. But how many real unusual circumstances have those vehicles been in that short sample? How many times have there been jet outs, or kids running after balls, or you can name all the different things that human drivers need to react to, and I'm just not sure that the AI, the robotaxi is equipped for all those scenarios and all those different environments. Maybe they do really well in San Francisco, but how are they going to do when they move on to a different city? Is it going to have to learn each city, and is there going to be repercussions that each city needs to face as these robotaxis get deployed? I think that human drivers at this moment in time have seen a lot more than the robo taxis. And look, I'm not blind. I'm not anti-tech. I do believe that this is the future, but I just want to make sure that the tech is there, because it was just a year or two ago that everybody was saying, "Oh, we're not ready. Uber's pulling its fleet because it's getting into crashes." And now we've made all this advancement in this short period of time. I don't buy it. I think people are seeing money. People are racing to the finish line, and all of these companies want to be first to market. So I don't believe the technology is as safe as they say it is, and the sample sizes don't do anything to prove to me that I'm wrong.
Right, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. So yeah, it's again. This is I've said this before on this show. He usually does a very good. Uber CEO Dara usually does a very good job of doing this. He preemptively, I call it a preemptive strike on the media. He often tries to get ahead of stories by getting in the story first. So every time I see that he does this, that's what it is to me, to kind of cover himself before it blows up or they try to point fingers. It's a smart business move. So we'll see. I'm sure he'll be in the news as this evolves and grows, and Uber's involved in more of the Teslas, and we'll see. But so those are the stories for this week. Before we head off in the weekend, as always, Bryant, I will give you the last word.
Yeah, just as we head into the weekend, I always remind everybody to please give Legal Rideshare a call if you find yourself in an accident or injured on the road. Consultations are always free. We help drivers, passengers, or anybody who's been a victim of a rideshare or gig-related accident or injury. LegalRideshare.com is the easiest way to find all of our contact information. Don't hesitate to reach out. We'll help you with the insurance claim. We'll help maximize the money that goes into your pocket if you find yourself hurt on the job.
Thank you, Bryant. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.